Okay, welcome to another episode of the 54 Book Project. So, the book that I'm going to review today is called Between Two Kingdoms by Sulika Jawad. The reason I wanted to review this book, is because it's a book that really touched me. And just to give you a little overview of what the book cover says, so, Sulika Jawad was preparing to graduate and enter the work world. She had moved to Paris and wanted to become a war correspondent eventually. But unfortunately, she got a diagnosis of there was something that she felt a little unwell, and then she got a diagnosis of leukemia and spent the next 4 years in a hospital bed trying to overcome this disease. She spent so many days, trying to survive, and the first half, or maybe 60% of the book, is about that survivor journey. But eventually, she she recovers, because there is a chance of a relapse in the future. But she recovers, and she decides to take like this 100-day, 15,000-mile road trip across the country. And while she was diagnosed, she also started writing a column about her experience as a person that got terminally ill in their 20s. So, this was what the book was about. Here are some of my notes and reflections from this book. And I've actually taken down a whole bunch of notes. The first thing I particularly enjoyed reading in this book was understanding Suleika's experience growing up as a mixed race um, individual. And she was from two different cultures, and she was also an immigrant. So her father was from North Africa, and her mother was from Europe, but they eventually decided to migrate and move to the US. And being from both these cultures gave her a glimpse of um, world views in both these cultures, and she was able to interpret it in very unique ways. For instance, there were some rituals that her mom brought from her culture, like she would make a certain sound with a bell that was very common in that particular country. And her dad used to do this thing where he'd throw water on a car before a person leaves as a sign, as a good omen of sorts. So that experience was really interesting, and she was also an immigrant, and eventually an American citizen, but I found that quite interesting. Now, when she was in the hospital, I found this part quite eye opening. Like, her boyfriend, who she just started dating when she got the diagnosis, stayed with her for over 3 years, and her parents were also there throughout this entire process. And I started thinking about how long would you care for someone if they got terminally ill, and how much of your life would you be open to keep on pause to support this loved one? And Suleika and her boyfriend in the book were in their early 20s, and they had to go through something like this, and it was the early part of their relationship as well. So I thought it was really hard for that relationship to to go through this experience so early on in their experience. So, and I think the book really sheds light on that whole journey of the role of the caregiver, and how they can be supportive, but also how it can affect their life if those clear boundaries are not drawn. Another thing I really liked was this thing called a 100-day project. When everything was looking gloomy and down for Suleika, she decided to create this idea of a 100-day project where she would do something for every single day for 100 days. And even her parents came on board. Her mom created like a piece of art. Her dad started writing her things. Suleika kept writing. Writing was her way of expressing how she was feeling. So that that was quite nice to see that she had some project to work towards. Mm, I think also I realized that so much of life is about waiting, like when she got the diagnosis, it wasn't easy to get access to medical care, but then she was also in so many hospital rooms just waiting for the right treatment. And it really made me reflect on how, doctors do try their best to support you, and even your body, for instance. I mean, it works so hard to make sure it doesn't mess up, and when it does mess up, it still fights and thrives, so but at the end of the day, I think illness is a basic fact of humanity, and eventually all of us are gonna, pass away in one way or another. And I think medicine can prolong that, but not delay that. And I think it really helped me come to terms with my mortality from a distant lens. So that was another thing I got from this book. I also really liked this idea of writing and getting feedback on your writing that Sulika got. So she started writing this column in a popular American newspaper, and people started writing back to her about their own experiences being ill. And I think that was one of the more powerful parts of this book, the stories that people shared with her, and how illness can also bring people together and sometimes bring the strongest parts of your personality out there. And yeah, and finally, I really liked the last part of this book where Sulika takes this 100-day journey across the United States. And there is actually a map here of the journey that she took. And she decided to meet all the people that wrote her letters when she was ill. Not all of them, but some of them, and that really touched her life. And she also made a lot of friends in the hospitals that she was staying at, so she met their relatives. And I think travel is a good metaphor for life. It teaches you that even though you keep moving, you're still, you know, an individual in that particular moment trying to process things. I think I remember hearing this quote is travel helps you look at the same things with a different lens, because you meet new people outside your immediate context, and that opens your eyes to new ways of thinking. So, yeah, I mean, this is a memoir about a small section of this person's life. I hope Sulika does write more, and I highly recommend the book for people that love memoirs. I love travel, and that's why I picked this up. So, thank you for listening to this episode, and I hope you tune in for more such episodes.